This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing.
I got one more thing I'd like to talk to you about right now.
Okay, so today I would like to talk to you about Black unity. The first time that Black unity as a concept took root in my mind, I might have been maybe 8 or 10 years old. So we're talking around 1990, 92. And this is the time, if you'll remember, of the leather medallions, the leather African medallions, and, you know, the Black Fist and the conscious hip hop and that whole movement that was kind of the counter movement to the gangster rap golden era, you know, the early 90s gangster rap golden era. And Black unity as a concept was something that I remember being announced as more of a necessity than it actually was. And all those many years ago, it wasn't until late last year when I really started to understand the importance of Black unity. So, what prompted this conversation today is, of all people, Shaun King. I follow Shaun King on social media, and I recognize that he is a controversial figure. But I have not found him to be too problematic, any more problematic than even myself or anyone else, to an outsider's view. So he definitely has the track record, he has the history, he's very transparent. And so for the purposes of this conversation, we will govern ourselves under the assumption that Shaun King is a decent person, which again, I found him to be. In any event, Shaun King posted an article recently about how the FBI managed to infiltrate the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. And they had plants from local chapters here and there that would have these well-crafted backstories and would ingratiate themselves with the leadership on the ground of various protests. One in Colorado comes to mind. And after infiltrating these organizations, they would try to convince the leadership to break the law. And what I recall is they would ask them to like carry these guns or obtain these weapons or something like that. And very few of the leaders fell for that. And that's good. It's amazing because, you know, we've seen what's happened with the Panthers, and this is part of why the BLM organization is organized the way that it is, because there's no head of the snake per se for the establishment to cut off. These are like individual cells all kind of moving toward the same goal. So what ended up happening was these folks, these plants, these people that infiltrated the movements, what they did was they tried to turn the Black leaders against each other to weaken the movement. And what they would do is they would say, hey, you know, that other organization across town that is, marching and protesting and, whatever, they're actually working with police. So they would, and then they would have documentation. I mean, it was bogus, of course, but they were working with the FBI. So they would have documentation, quote unquote, to show, see, these guys are working with the police. And so those seeds of division, even though all these separate orgs wanted the same thing and were working toward the same goal. So what ended up happening was these orgs stopped working together, and I would imagine maybe even started working against each other. Because if you think someone's working with the police and you're working to protect Black lives against the police, then it stands to reason that you would associate the people who you've been misinformed about with the police, with the enemy. And so these seeds of division can take root, have taken root in recent years, and they often turn us against each other. And this is something that we need to be mindful of. Now, because of the early 90s, when my consciousness was made aware of Black unity as a concept, I was particularly interested in the stories posted by Sean King. I believe he follows a podcast or something called The Alphabet Boys. And these Alphabet Boys sort of uncovered all this information. And then I was sent a link from the show's producer, Chris Thompson. And it's a strange connection to make, but I make these strange connections and then I have these conversations with you. The link said, Disney is openly defying Ron DeSantis, announcing they are hosting largest LGBTQ conference in Florida. So, forgive me if you got whiplash from me switching gears like that, but I'll make the connection. But I'll say it again. Disney is, in response to the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and indeed the expansion of the Don't Say Gay bill, Disney is working with the LGBTQ community to host the largest conference in Florida. And again, this is just kind of a thumb in the eye to Ron DeSantis, but indeed Disney is supporting this community, the LGBTQIA plus community. And what we see here is a classic example of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We see unity, united in a cause, right? I'm not sure how many of the interests are shared by Disney and the LGBTQ community, but this one is very important to both. This Ron DeSantis issue is important to both, and we see them united behind that. And it was at that point when I read that article that I started to see the difference that unity can make, unification can make. And I started to see how our people are in need of more unity. We need to be more united more often. Now, this isn't just me taking some examples and guessing. I've actually lived through this. Many of you know. after late last year becoming the steward of the trademark for White Lives Matter, the ability to make and produce and sell clothing branded with that logo in the United States, effectively preventing Kanye West from being able to do so. Many people were very, very excited about this new reality where these clothes would not be on the backs of kids at the mall, right? Because that was not the agenda once the trademark made its way to me. I would never live in a world where a hate slogan would be worn by countless people in public spaces, right? So many people, many Black people applauded what was happening, what we were trying to do. And, you guys are playing chess and so forth. They could kind of read the play. But then there were some Black people, a not insignificant amount, who had a lot of other stuff to say. Oh, you're, trying to keep another Black man down. Oh, you're, working with the Jews, all kind of nonsense. So what if we are? The point is, it was very difficult to live through that moment where I was able to witness firsthand exactly how divided my people are behind an effort that is very clearly well-intentioned and very clearly designed to keep hate speech from being mass marketed to the degree that a person like Kanye West could. People were just jumping over each other to try to pick apart anything. Okay. So again, lived experience, not just articles, but this isn't about me. So, let's contrast this with something to make it live. Black Lives Matter. That is the most prominent and most recent civil rights moment that we all lived through. And the moment some stuff came to light about the finances, about what they were spending money on, many Black people were quick to abandon that movement. And for me, I tend to look at things like that, like, okay, who stands to benefit from this? Have we seen this in the past? Right? So I was a little less, I was a little bit more critical of the criticism. We'll say it that way. And so for me, I'm looking for criminal activity. I'm looking for things that actually show sinister intentions, right? Were these people stealing? Is there bad accounting? What really is happening here? Is this a front for a drug operation? Or is this an organization that from 2012, from the death of Trayvon Martin, got out there in the streets and protested up until 2020, up until after 2020? So we're talking nearly 10 solid years of making it happen, real actual change. And then a small piece of information that comes out suggesting that they may not have spent the money the way you would have. And then all of a sudden, everybody Black turns their back. Not everybody Black, but you get what I'm saying. A lot of Black people turn our backs on this organization. Based on that, they didn't spend the money the way that you would have. Now, have you been a social justice warrior, civil rights leader of a movement for a decade? Do you understand the ways and the levels that you're vulnerable in that capacity? Who are you to decide how the money should be spent when you lack that perspective, right? oh, they spent money on mansions and this and that. Well, from what I read, they got safe houses that were in gated areas where they were behind gates to where they couldn't be surveilled. And people couldn't just kick in the door and raid the places. And they did that strategically because they knew that what they would be up against. They got places with enough room where they could house people who would be political prisoners. You know, they had reasons for this. And at the end of the day, let's say I have the skill set to run an organization. Let's call the organization Pepsi, or pick an organization. It doesn't matter. To what degree should I be compensated if I run Pepsi for 10 years? Now, let's say I run a different organization. So it requires the same skill set, same discipline, same experience, etc. Let's say instead of running Pepsi, I run Sterling microphones, because there's a microphone in the studio here, and I run Sterling Audio. Okay, requires the same skill set as Pepsi. To what degree should I be compensated? No, and you see the direction I'm going in. You recognize that people who are leaders of industry are typically compensated better than workers. They take more risks. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that is kind of the function of the society that we live in a capitalistic society. The job creators, the more effective contributors, if you will, to society. Again, I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is the way we approach folks like this. This is why teachers have more important jobs, but are paid less than people who administrate. Right? Despite it being less work to do that overall. And so you see kind of the direction I'm going in here. Because you're at the helm of a movement that is intended to help people, you should be poor. You should not have, your dreams don't get to come true. You don't get to live comfortably. And see, these are things that we're taught. That's kind of the intersection of capitalism and just kind of what we see of Black people and our idea of success as Black folks. Because I was having a conversation with a good friend the other day who herself, she has 4 friends who each of them makes, I believe it was like $800,000 a year running a nonprofit. And that everybody's surprisingly okay with that. On that side of the coin. Over here, we'd be up in arms. $800,000, that's steal, because we're taught to think that. In fact, provided that they are legally compliant, that is all well and good. Because again, they're at the helm, right? You need people, you need that executive talent to execute on that level and to recruit and maintain that executive talent, not lose that executive talent to other industries. You compensate accordingly. So what I just gave you was an example of, we're going to use this term here. We're going to coin it here. White unity. $800,000, all 4 of those white women at the helm of that nonprofit got the support of their community because they're doing good work. They can make $800,000 doing bad work very easily, but they're doing good work and they get applauded. And us, as soon as we, BLM, they bought some houses. Now all of a sudden we turn our backs. Okay. But let's say they're more problematic than I know. And maybe you have some insider information. Okay. The point is that standing by Black orgs, Black people, Black movements is something that we need more of. There's no 2 ways about it. For us to have division in our community among our people weakens everything that we stand for. that we need to stand for, that we need to fight for. So I saw something, might have been yesterday. It was some Fox News stuff. But basically it was a white woman white-splaining what woke means. And this was in response, or rather in defense of, a viral moment of an earlier white woman being questioned by a black woman on a news clip. The black woman questioned this earlier white woman, "What does woke mean to you?" You may have seen it. And she kind of fumbled over her words, as they do. And then she said out loud, "Oh my God, this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral," because she couldn't define what woke means. Right. So again, what I saw yesterday in the clip from Fox News was a separate white woman defending that woman for fumbling over her words. And basically was trying to say that woke is a feeling. Right. And she was kind of standing there with her on the news so everybody could see it, to, again, explain away wokeness, or rather the lack of not fully knowing what it means, or indeed knowing what it means and not being able to say it out loud because it sounds inhuman if you stand in opposition to what the primary definition of woke means. So what I saw there was, of course, whitewashing, white-splaining, all that sort of stuff, right? But more importantly, I saw unity. I saw support in that moment. And when you see this, and this is a textbook from, conservatives, right wing, far right wing, especially GOP folks. It doesn't matter how wrong it is. They are just going to stand firm because they're not alone. They got each other. They got that unity. You may have seen the document that was passed around in, I believe it was a Senate committee or House committee, something like that. And it was basically a document condemning racism, and 0 Republicans signed it. All the liberals signed it. None of the Republicans signed it. And the document is widely circulated on the internet. You can see it. Condemning racism. Now, I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 of them is like, I don't really know if I want to go down in history like this, but they stood firm and they stood together. Or maybe they all feel that way and it's very easy for them to just not sign that document because they really don't believe in it. Who's to say? The fact is, 0 of them signed it. That's unity. And of course, the biggest example of all is the fact that the ex-president of the United States constantly is making missteps, either socially or legally, actively breaking laws, you name it. This man has done it all. And you ask anybody on that side of the aisle, there's nothing to see here. They could hate this dude's guts. And they stand firm and they stand shoulder to shoulder. And for as small in overall numbers as that party is, they are very effective. They'd like you to think that they make up half of the country, and they do not. They absolutely do not. This is why they have to gerrymander their way into power. And they have to lie and manipulate. I mean, you've seen George Santos. There's all kinds of nonsense that's taking place here. They break the rules in front of everybody. And they are not held accountable by the people that they stand shoulder to shoulder with. And it's onward and upward, full speed ahead. and they don't break formation. And so you start to understand the importance of unity, a united front. And hopefully I've made my point about just how effective Black unity can be. As always, I open the floor to you. Talk to me. Let me know what you think. You can reach out using the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. And of course, I'm at Ramses Jah on all social media. Hey man, we're brothers and sisters. We don't agree on a lot of stuff, but most of the stuff we do agree on. And these are the conversations that we need to have. Okay. I've never cared if you were Black. I've never cared if you were white. Never cared if you were Asian, anything. We're brothers and sisters, and we need to figure this out together. So let's do that. All right. Peace.
This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Jah, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice, from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.